Yeah, I mean, but and you play it. I was showing your music to my wife tonight before we were, it's one of those things I do. Like, this is who I'm interviewing. I'm not going downstairs and just doing some crap, like some bullshit downstairs. This is a really interesting interview because my wife's a musician, and so I was playing some of your music, and she was like, she was pulling at the like so I see this influence, I see this influence, and she's like, you got the jazz. How would you describe like your music style? What are some of the influences, and where did you kind of get your inspiration from?
Yeah, well, I mean, like anyone growing up in America, you're like inundated with so many different influences.
Right?
I also grew up as a musician. I started playing piano and violin like around like 3 and 4 years old.
Oh wow.
So like there was this kind of parallel thing that was happening just growing up, being surrounded by like things like hip hop and R&B, and my older brother, who's like 8 years older than me, was like always just hipping me to like new sounds and new music. So he listened to everything from like Run DMC to Pat Metheny, like
Oh
everything
wow.
just down to, yeah, he's such a music lover, such a lover of all sorts of things. So growing up with that in the house, and also growing up traditionally learning classical music, because I started playing violin at a very young age, and then when I started playing saxophone, that's where I started traditionally learning how to play jazz. And so there were like those parallels, right? Listening to dance music, but then going to school and like playing and like learning how to improvise and play jazz. So my influences are very, like I'm pretty much like across the spectrum. And for anybody who's like familiar with my music, you kind of hear that right away, because I'm not really pegged by any type of genre or anything like that. It's really, as I like to say, there's only two different types of music. There's good music and there's bad music, and that's pretty much it.
Right? Right?
So yeah, that's what's up.
Well, yeah, you really nailed it. Like, cause like I was listening to one song and it almost sounded like meditative, and then the next
Mm,
thing was like very much like a hip hop beat with some saxophone, and the next thing was like almost EDM,
yeah.
but yeah, always with this underlying jazz influence to it. And
Hmm.
so I was just like, that's awesome. And
Yeah.
and you don't seem to be like, you're not just a saxophonist. I mean, you're setting up samples and doing loops and all types
Yeah.
of fun things there, man. Which is, you have a cool setup in all your videos. I was just like, nice.
Thank you very much, man. Appreciate
Uh,
that.
no, for sure. Now, so I want to go back because you were talking about, you grew up with music, and
Hmm.
you already started talking about some of the influences that were in your life. Now,
Hmm.
how did you get into piano? And it was piano, and what other instrument did you play again?
So I started on piano and violin.
Okay, and
Yeah.
violin.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
was this? There has to be a parent thing. Are your parents musicians as well?
Yeah, so my mom was a classical pianist,
Oh wow.
and also like the music teacher at like this what's called a magnet school in Texas, but
Okay.
basically a performing and visual arts school
Oh,
for
that's awesome.
kids. Yeah, I went to that school, but yeah, she was a teacher there, and my sister. Is also a cellist as well. So like I
That's
kind of
awesome.
grew up around, people playing instruments. My mom like had a private practice of having kids come over to the house, and she would teach them private lessons on piano. So immediately as soon as I could walk, I was like at the piano trying to like make songs.
That's
And
awesome.
yeah, I even have an old picture from back in the day of me doing my first piano recital, which was basically my mom just letting me be on stage for like 2 minutes to, present my song that I was like
That's awesome.
begging to like present for her recital. She would do like this annual recital every year. So yeah, yeah, man. I mean, just that, like my parents, my siblings, they all had an early impact, on me really loving music and diving full throttle into that, really kind of in a way being my first language.
See,
I like to tell.
that's something that you're tapping into that I like to hear, man.
That's what's up.
There's a guitarist that we have here that my wife is friends with, and his name is Sa. And Sa is legit. Like, there's no other way to say it, man. Sa.
Nice.
Sa doesn't play guitar though. He speaks guitar.
There we go.
and like it's not playing with the instrument. Like I love guitar. I play guitar. I'm not very good at it, but I love it, right? But Sa, my guitar is, I'll do some acoustic, rhythm guitar stuff, and I'm not bad. I'm not great. But Sa, took my guitar, and it was like not that great of a guitar comparatively. It's not like a $12,000, $15,000 guitar. It's a good guitar, but Sa took it and he made it sound like it was, a Stradivarius. I mean, it was insane. Stradivarius is not a guitar, but you know what I mean.
It's a violin, but yeah, I get you.
Yeah, some refined instrument that's just absolutely amazing, and it's amazing that you talk about that language, because the way. My wife will go to him with a song. I want to try this, and he's transcribing things like it's that. Oh, boom. It's just he's moving through. And how about if we try this chord instead? Because it creates this atmosphere, this vibe. And it's just like there's certain people that speak music, and
That's right.
and I think that it's interesting that you said it's your first language, not even a second language. It's your first language. Talk to me about that. Why would you say that? Where does that come from?
I mean, honestly, because I can express myself so much more, easy through music than I can through spoken word. And at the same time, yeah, I probably had a few words like under my belt when I first started tinkering at the piano, but I couldn't, read at 3. But by the time I was 3 years old, I could play a C scale, and understand what that meant and what it sounded like and how it should sound if I changed the key, that kind of thing. So like, that's what I mean, on both a kind of metaphorical way and also like in a way, like very, literal too, in that sense.
That's so interesting. So interesting. Well, one of the things, I saw this video on YouTube the other day, or not YouTube, it was on Instagram. And it was these two twins, or maybe it was Facebook. It was somewhere where I'm just scrolling through something.
In the ether.
Yeah, right. And there was these two kids, and the title of the video is Watch These Two Kids That Are Pre-Language. They're like maybe 2.5, 3. Communicate with each other very clearly before doing something. So they're both sitting there. The dad puts down these candies in front of them, and he's like, don't eat the candies. I'm going to walk out of the room. Don't eat the candies. And they got the camera running, and the two kids are like, sure did. And so, but they're very intense looking at these candies. And all of a sudden, there's this point in the video where the dad walks out, and the kids look at the candy, and then they do this, and you can see the communication, a very clear conversation that happened with no words. They look at each other, and they're like, yeah, and boom, and they just both start munching, and they're both laughing, like. But there was this like, should we do it? Yeah, all right, and boom, they go at the same time, and it's interesting because, what was that movie? Arrival.
Oh, man,
wow.
Dude. This is the second time in less than a week that somebody has brought up this movie that I have not watched yet.
What?
I know. No. I know.
Dude, you gotta go watch it. It's so good.
I know. I feel so ashamed because like I am a legit like sci-fi fan, and I love like everything superhero, everything like outer space, like. And like I was talking about this I was doing this United Way gala on Saturday. And this magician who was a part of the whole spectacle, we were talking. That's like awesome. Just behind the scenes, yeah. And like we were having the same conversation and he was like, "Yeah, dude, like Arrival." And I was like, "Huh?" Like, and yeah, I haven't seen it, man. I just yeah.
Did he?
So
I can't give it away, but you know, they're dealing with the concept that they're dealing with is language and how we. I speak Vietnamese, and I study Japanese and German and Spanish, and you know, I'm a native English speaker. But like each language really doesn't just express itself differently. Each language sees the world differently. You know, you can look at something like English. I go to the store. So it's, you know, the person, subject, verb, object, you know, like there's this thing acting upon another thing, you know. But you look at Japanese, it's subject, object, verb. So I, store, go, you know, and it's like, and so they start from, and they're like, and this is all human beings that start orienting differently. Like, how do we not know that, like, how do we know that aliens are going to even, and that was one of the things, like, how do you get a species that has a completely different understanding of time? How did they communicate? You know, because I mean, our language is so linear on this idea of concept of time. So it's so interesting.
Very, very interesting, man. And like, this is like, I was like, Sunday night, you know, because I had the day off, I was like scouring through to try to find this movie, and it's not on any streaming platform. And so like I have to rent it. But I was like, you know what? If I have to rent it, let me wait until my wife is like able to like join me to watch the movie together. So like you know, we're gonna watch it this coming weekend when we're both like just.
I won't say anything else, but it's so good.
Yeah. That's
well, you know, one of the cool things is like, you remember the old, you don't remember, you're pretty old, but you ever hear, it's pretty old, the Voyager spacecraft that they sent out into deep space. Those two
I've heard of this,
man-made objects. There's Voyager 1 and Voyager 2, the two objects that went the furthest out into space.
Yep.
And one of the things that I love about that is that on one of them, I believe it's either Voyager 1 or Voyager 2, I don't know, but I think it's Voyager 1, they had this gold disc of sounds and music.
With
and
like the Beatles and like, like sounds of nature and things like this.
The whale songs. And it's like, because, and it was really interesting to, if you look at that, you can go online and find the content that's contained on that disc. And
I didn't know that.
Yeah. You can go and find that. And it's really interesting to look at like what was curated from that time to be a representative of you know, human consciousness and our best. I mean, like, obviously they weren't including the worst, but you know, but what we're beaming out, you know, on radio waves is, you know, going to be all over the cosmos as well. You know, can you imagine like some alien species turning on, suddenly there's Elvis, you know?
That's crazy.
Yeah, so it's wild. It's wild.
It is.
Now then, I want to sidetrack. Why do you love sci-fi?
I don't know, man. I mean, I think, you know, my older brother probably shaped a lot of my love for certain things. You know, just because like he was always like, he'd be like at the house watching anime, watching like, you know, different like, you know, just like all sorts of things, you know. And I grew up watching like things like the X-Men, you know, the cartoon, you know, series, like and just like, I don't know, like I always gravitated towards like certain cartoons that you know, had like some kind of sci-fi, or like, you know, if there were mutants involved, I was like all about it. If there were aliens involved, I was all about it. You know, growing up as a kid, like I probably wore out the VHS of like the Never Ending Story, you know. It's like, man, that's like my favorite movie. Like one gift that my wife made, because she's a painter, you know, one gift that she gave me like early on when we were dating was like this picture of Falcor, you know, like she like painted. It's amazing, you know, but like
that's really awesome.
But yeah, I have no idea, to be honest. Like, I've just always like been curious about the things that we don't see. You know what I mean? And I think that probably also paints a clear picture as to the type of music I like to produce as well,
Yeah.
because you know, I've always gravitated towards like, you know, just being able to do something outside of just playing the saxophone. And that's where I, you know, really gravitated to like really learning the piano, you know,
Yeah.
and like being able to produce music and like create worlds, you know, that like I can feature the saxophone on, but at the same time, I'm like creating a world around it, you know, and the saxophone is kind of like the main voice, or the main, you know, and the way I like to say it, the main character of whatever
Oh, hell
story
yeah.
in
Hell
that
yeah.
world that I'm seeing.
My
Yeah.
podcast is coming. My 100th episode is going up. I'll upload it as soon as we're done talking. I'm super excited. It's going up today.
Nice.
And I talked to my friend Tim, and he was talking about his love for Star Wars. And one of
Mm.
the things that he was talking about is going back to the originals. And he was like, you know, I saw the original in the cinema, and he was
Oh,
talking about
wow.
that. And so yeah, he's a tad bit older than me, but we're about the same age. And you know, he saw it in 78, 76
That's
or 77.
amazing.
And he was like talking about it. And one of the things that he said was he's a producer, you know, audio engineer down in Nashville. He's a really
Hmm.
cool guy. And what he was talking about is with Star Wars, it was one of the first times that the music itself was a character.
Yeah.
You know,
Woo,
and
that's so deep, man. But that's
it,
so
it,
true.
and think about it, like because each character, John Williams, each character that comes out has their own theme, and so
Hmm.
that music, you know, or dun 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 dun
Yeah, the
dun, you know,
hero
and it, like
song.
automatically you see it, or
Yeah.
think about like, and Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were really great at this, you know, because there were songs that acted as characters, you know. Dun,
Mhm.
dun, 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 dun. Tell me if you're swimming in a pool and someone starts going dun, 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 I
The
don't care
shark is
how old
coming.
you are, you're gonna be like, I'm looking in the water, I'm looking around
Yeah,
me, you know.
exactly. The shark is coming, man. Jaws.
Right? But that was the cool thing is, and like what you were talking about is that it can become a character. You know, that this
Mhm.
your instrument is a character. The certain vocal line can be a character's speech. You know.
Exactly. And that ties into that aspect of it being a language, you know, and
Yep.
like we were talking about those different ways in which the world looks at, you know, communication, and therefore they look at the world differently. The beautiful thing is that music is the universal language that we can all share, you
Right.
know, and I think that's like also like such a powerful way to communicate. You know, somebody listening to the same song here in New York and in Japan
Right.
can vibe in the same way and like really feel whatever that energy is the artist is trying to convey. And then at the same time, if it's an instrumental track, you know, it's interesting when I put out an instrumental track and then I ask, you know, some of my fans like, oh, what did you think of this track? And like, what did it mean to you? And to hear like all of the different aspects that like popped out to them, but they all like were a part of the intention of the song. It's just that like because of that person's like that
Yeah.
person's life and their experience and their
Yes.
background, they might catch something a little bit different, you know, or
We
like a little bit more.
exactly. Well, you know, it's like it kind of taps in a little bit into like postmodernism. You know, like the idea
Yeah.
of like when I say the word house. And
Mm,
we say the word house, and we
yeah.
think we all understand the concept of a house. But you know what? If you come to Vietnam, the houses are tall and skinny. Versus
Mhm.
we just flew back to the States to visit, and my wife and I went to New England, and I hadn't been there since I was a kid. And there was those
Ah,
New England houses. Like it's
right.
very specific. Versus a house in Texas is going to
Yeah.
look different from a house in New York. And there's
Hmm.
this idea of like you. Yet with music, it can bridge into those emotional recesses. It's almost
Exactly.
like I love there's certain things I binge watch, and it's really, some of them are weird. Like one of the things that I like to binge watch is I like watching these horseshoe videos, like where these people
Horseshoe videos.
dude, check them out sometimes. Farrier videos, Farrier. There's like all over Instagram, and they're wild to watch these guys trim the horseshoes, right? But not talking about those tonight. I'm talking about the other thing that I really like are watching these epoxy videos where the people will take a piece of wood and then they, and it's like one of those branches that's all like bent and not like and misshapen, and then they wrap it in something and then they fill it up with epoxy, and the epoxy just seeps down into every last little nook and cranny, and they just leave it there. They fill it up, and then they can polish the epoxy, and it creates like this orb, like this globe, because it seeps into every last place, and music has that ability to seep into those places that you don't know that you're vulnerable. You don't know that you've got that thing that needs to be looked at.
Yeah, man, most def. Yeah, no, I find that I learn more about myself through every song I create than through just trying to like use my own logic to evaluate myself, like it's like through songs I can tap into an aspect of what I'm dealing with, or like what I'm going through, something from my like, my past, or something from, something that I'm trying to like get to in the future. And it's very interesting. I find myself like reevaluating who I am through every song that I create, which is like kind of an interesting thing,
Well, and you don't, and you can work through things that you might not have identified. Like I wrote a song. I'm not a songwriter in any way, shape, or form, but I wrote a song that
We're
was
all
something
songwriters, man.
Right? Actually, yeah, that's true. I was bullshit. Like I am a songwriter, right?
There you go, man.
I wrote this song and I ended up writing it for two reasons. It's called Winona, and it's a song that I wrote about my grandma, and my grandma died when my mom was 13. And so my daughter never met her. And so I wanted my daughter to know her story. And so I wrote this song and about how she died on Christmas Day, and how she had like this beautiful life and had all this promise, and it just didn't work out. And the song was beautiful and melodic, and I thought it was beautiful. And I think it sounds amazing. I worked with my friend Fu on it, and so it turned out really nice. Fu's an amazing guitarist as well. But it was in the power of what the content was. And when I played it for my mom said that she had it on loop for like 4 days, because it just was something that like, and that was who I wanted to inspire. And if anyone else can feel something from that. And then my daughter was like, once my song was on one of our playlists, and I was cleaning up my YouTube channel, and I was like, oh, and I moved it into the right playlist. And my daughter looked up and she's like, "That's your grandma, right?" And I was like, yeah.
That's amazing.
And it was like the song allowed this family trauma to kind of be looked at, addressed, and worked on, And so I didn't even realize it was going to be so cathartic to everyone, but it was.
Yeah, man. I mean, it can be a healing process, Both of my parents, they passed away when I was really young. My dad when I was 12, and my mom when I was 18, like right after I graduated from high school. So walking through life as being just like all of a sudden in this new location, and like a college dorm, in the middle of like what I considered nowhere, because my whole life was centered around growing up in Houston. And then all of a sudden, I was in New Orleans, and just like the idea that, if I didn't have this music, I mean, honestly, like it saved my life, because it was for me, it was like, it gave me the ability to focus my energy and my feelings somewhere, Where before, I became Buddhist, I didn't really have that kind of outlet. And, music was really, that was, in a way, like kind of my religion,
Right.
especially in a time of grief, so
Well,
yeah.
speaking about Buddhism, my undergraduate degree was history with an emphasis in Eastern religions, and I
Oh,
specialized
cool.
my graduate thesis, not graduate, but my my senior thesis in university was a focus on Zen Buddhism and kind of
Oh,
looking
wow,
at
cool.
the comparisons between Zen Buddhism and Lao Tzu and Chuang-Tzu and the Taoist traditions and how there's this connection there. And one of the things, or why I bring that up, is that I think that music is this insane spiritual experience.
It
Like if you
really
look
is.
at the dancers from the Sufi tradition, that have you ever
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
they just spin in
Hmm.
circles, and then you see someone like when Stevie Ray Vaughan or BB King are making their guitar sing. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And it's like right there, man. It's this experience that's just like rapture, it
Hmm.
transcendent.
Yeah,
And you
man.
can see that, like, and then you look at the traditions in of music in religion, whether it be just a basic, Christmas hymn in or some deeply soulful musical performance at a church or whatever it is. It's there's this spirituality that we've had associated with just music, and I mean, and I'm gonna pull it back full circle, like when you bring in with the absolute zen nature of improv with jazz, because like let's be
Mm.
real, man. I'll have a night where I'll get out a bottle of wine and throw on some Coltrane and just
Yeah,
be
there you
like,
go.
I'm gonna touch the soul of the universe right now.
Yeah,
And
man.
it's
Yeah.
powerful, man.
Yeah, I mean, not to dumb it down or anything, but I thought the movie, the Pixar movie Soul that came out
So good. Not dumbing it down. Dude, that's some deep
yeah.
stuff right there,
It
man.
was
No way.
amazing, man. Like, I mean,
So
just to go
so
from like
spot
talking
on.
about Buddhism to talking about, a Pixar movie,
Yeah.
but
No, but
it
Pixar
was
movie, that's deep as
they're
hell, man.
drenched. Yeah, they're drenched, man. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
right?
movie just like it, no pun intended, touched my soul because
Right?
it was the first time I was able to kind of see in a movie exactly how I feel, that like kind of transcendent flow that you get into when you're, improvising, when you're,
Yeah.
speaking that language, and not, it's not a prepared speech, it's like you're really just communicating and having a conversation, with either the people that you're performing with, or like, for instance, a lot of times in my case, like because I DJ and play saxophone, it's like, it's, I'm like having this kind of communication with the people that are dancing in the audience, and like really just like vibing off of the energy of like the crowd and that kind of thing. So
Two
yeah.
things there that you got that I want to dive into. So with the idea of my speaker, something just beeped in my room. With the idea of Zen nature, right? And it's like the idea of like in Zen school of Buddhism, they developed the concept of the koan, and the koan was the essentially
Mm.
this idea of little sayings that would help assist someone on the way to enlightenment. And so it would be something like one of the famous ones is, "What is the Buddha?" And it's like,
Mm.
and then the answer to it was, "Look at the three-legged donkey running down the hill." And what does that mean? And people were like, well, "I don't understand it." It's like because people are sitting there getting in their head, like, "What is the
Mm.
Buddha? What is it about? How do you become a good person?" And the person's like, "There's a three-legged donkey running down the hill over there. Like, I don't care what the hell you want to talk about. That's an interesting thing." And I think
Hmm.
one of the scenes in a movie that exemplifies this best was the movie American Beauty.
Oh yeah,
And
that's
that
crazy.
scene where the trash bag is just dancing to the music,
Oh
and
yeah,
it's
I
just
remember that.
that scene was just so, it's like this divine flow. And then one of the other cool things too is one of the I absolutely love the Brazilian martial art of capoeira.
Oh yeah, dude.
So capoeira has this cool thing, right? I studied it for a short period of time, and I hope I
That's
don't
amazing.
misspeak. Yeah, I'm not good. I'm not good.
Okay.
My friend, I have some friends
that's
who are
amazing.
amazing, but it's fun. But they have
Yeah.
this cool thing that in capoeira, an integral part of capoeira is the music.
Hmm.
And they need to
The
play
drums.
to create, yeah, the drums, the berimbau, and
Hmm.
all of the other, the the tambourine that is called. It's a different name in Portuguese. I'm not even
Yeah, I
gonna
can't
try it in Portuguese.
remember.
Yeah, but they have the whole musical kind of like ensemble that plays,
Hmm.
and the idea is to create what in capoeira they call axé, which is like
Mm.
this. The only way I could describe it, and I'm trying to conceptualize it. What I witnessed was like, it's almost like this bubble of positivity, and the better the
Mm.
music, the better that the capoeira is, the more
Hmm.
passion, and it creates this like, and it's like almost like there's this belief that it creates like this magical bubble around us, and
That's
so it's
amazing.
like, and I wonder if music in general is like that, where when a DJ is in his flow and or
Yeah.
her flow, and they're just like crushing it, right? Are
Yeah.
you creating
Same.
almost like this magic, you know?
Yeah, I feel like that's a really great parallel to exactly how I feel. Like, regardless of if I'm like at a jazz club with a quartet, or if I'm doing a DJ set and like everybody's there like dancing, it's like once you really get into that flow, it's
Yeah.
like the whole energy, like everybody is like kind of having, there's like a shared energy, I guess I could say,
Yeah.
like where
Yeah.
like everybody's connected, everybody's just with you, and like there's a certain power to that too, in the sense of like knowing that like everybody's with you and like giving them the opportunity to just completely let loose, and i
Right.
i love that. I love the idea of having this kind of tool in which we can allow people to express their full selves, and I think when it comes to Buddhism, that's the whole practice for me, like I don't practice Zen Buddhism. I practice what's called Nichiren Buddhism.
I know Nichiren
It's
Buddhism. Yeah.
yeah. So like,
But for
I
people who
chant.
don't know, can tell us a little bit about what that is.
Yeah, so I chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. It's
Mm.
it's a very old practice, and it's really it's all about chanting for self, like in a way self empowerment.
Yeah.
Chanting to like really gain the courage to just walk through life regardless of the obstacles. That obstacles themselves are opportunities for growth, and
Yep.
so
Yep.
that's a really kind of like, elevator pitch, I guess you could say, of what, the practice is. But
And for anyone who wants to hear the chant done beautifully, go online, search Namo. Namo?
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Nam Myoho Renge Kyo.
Kyo.
I'm,
Yeah,
I'm, I'm slaughtering
exactly.
it, but
That's pretty
search
good.
it.
That was pretty good.
Done by Tina Turner. Have you seen
Yep.
hers?
Yeah, of course, man.
So good, man. So good.
Yeah,
So
man.
good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like she was one of the people that I knew was practicing this who really like influenced me into starting to practice Buddhism. Growing up as a jazz musician, I was like a fan, and still am a fan of Herbie Hancock. who also practices this type of Buddhism.
I didn't
And
know
so
that
does
Herbie Hancock also
yeah,
did.
yeah, exactly, man. And so does Wayne Shorter, who's like a phenomenal saxophonist. Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock have worked together for years. They were a part of Miles Davis's quintet in the
Wow.
late '60s and '70s. So they had a long history and like both practiced the same Buddhism. But yeah, man. I mean, like the idea of like that shared energy, right? It
Yeah,
really
yeah.
feels the same when I'm chanting with like a ton of people. Sometimes we'll get together like pre-COVID, we'll
Yeah,
get
right.
together with like a ton of people and like
Yeah.
just chant and like that same like kind of like because everybody's on the same rhythm and the same doing the same chant, so like there's like this shared energy and you feel the same thing when you're like on stage and you're like performing with a band or you're on stage and you're DJing and like everybody's dancing. It's like this shared like energy because everybody's on the same on the same wavelength, if you will. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's really cool.
There was another time where I really experienced that, and it was such a powerful experience to me. I got to watch the San Francisco koto group, like
Yeah, yeah,
is
yeah.
it koto or the drums? The big it's not koto, it's
Oh, the drums.
Jap
Oh,
Japanese style taiko.
Taiko
I got to watch the
Yeah,
Japanese taiko group from San Francisco,
very cool.
and so legit. And one of the
Hmm.
things that's crazy there when I was at this winery that my friend invited me to up in the Napa Valley, and it was like early early two late 90s, early 2000s, and then it was like after Wesley Snipes and Sean Connery had that movie Rising Sun way back in the day, and so
Yeah.
and that group had played there, and so that was kind of like this taiko. Everyone's like, oh yeah, they were in that movie. And when you go in and when you're that close to these drums,
Mm.
you viscerally feel it. And
Yeah.
everyone viscerally feels it, or you're front row at a big concert and you just, and it's this thing. There was something I kept popping up to is like how music is such a shared experience, even when there's no music. Like, was you ever seen those silent raves where
Oh yeah,
they give
yeah, yeah.
people like a headset and
Hmm.
everyone's listening to the same music broadcasted out to the headset? And so I
Yeah.
love the videos of like what happens when they show the room, someone's holding up a phone and it's literally a completely quiet room, but everyone is like totally vibing out to the same. They're just like, yeah. And it's like, but it's a silent room, but yet
Exactly.
there's this synchronization that happens, and
Hmm.
that to me is just always really cool.
It's beautiful, man. It's beautiful. It's
Ready?
a beautiful experience to be able to conduct that, to be in the audience myself, and to like be able to share in that. It's like yeah, it's amazing. I love it so much.
Yeah. Now I got a question for you. Now, if you could go
Hmm.
back in time and
Yeah.
give your younger self some advice, what would you go back and tell your younger self?
Oh man. Interestingly enough,
Right?
I was just having this conversation with someone in an NFT community that I'm a part of, and I would not go back in time and do anything to disrupt who I am today. Um,
I like that.
so, like, I
Well,
mean,
let's
honestly,
imagine you could do this. Let's say this. Not going back. We're not going. We're not going to go anything like Back to the Future. Let's imagine you go back in time and you want to just share a point of inspiration, not change anything.
Mm,
Like
yeah.
communicate a lesson to your younger
Hmm.
self. Maybe like, hey, keep doing great. You're doing a good job, or something like that. What would
Yeah.
you? What type of communication would you give it to your younger self?
I'm not sure.
Or maybe it's nothing. I'm not. That's
Yeah,
okay too.
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I guess like one of the lessons that I had to learn the hard way which is this is why it's difficult, because I feel like because I learned it the hard way, it hits a little bit harder. But maybe if I heard this as a younger kid, it would be brushed off, like it would just go right over my head. But then maybe later on in my life, I'd be like, oh, I remember somebody telling me that. It would be that obstacles always lead to opportunities. So never be defeated, and that's
Yep.
I mean, honestly, like, just learning the attitude of like the never give up spirit, to never be defeated, to know that you can lose, but in every loss, there's always an opportunity to grow so that you win
Yes.
later.
Yep.
Those are
Yep.
very important tools that I'm using now, like on a day-to-day basis, that are helping me to like continuously just live a happy life, so
Yeah.
I guess that would be what I would say.
I like
But
that.
yeah,
There's a
my younger self,
th-
it would like it would just go right over my head.
What are you talking about, bro?
Exactly.
There's a great author that I really enjoy, Ryan Holiday, and he's got a book
Okay.
called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and I love that.
There we go.
And it's
Yeah.
really interesting that like the thing that stops you is often the thing that creates this transformation. And so
Mhm.
sometimes you need that event to actually make you more of who you are,
Yeah.
and like, and I think that back on my life, and there are multiple times where things seemed like they were falling apart, and actually it was the thing falling into place,
Yeah,
and
there we
sometimes you can't see it, you can't see it in the moment. I actually had a falling out with a long-term old friend of 15 plus years yesterday.
Oh, wow.
And it sucked. But
I can imagine. Yeah.
at the same time, I feel like our friendship had turned into a space of we both were so obligation and dependent upon each other for things that I think that by taking a step back, it's going to actually make it so that maybe at a future time we can re-engage and have something positive. And I sent them the most cordial email I could, just saying, I appreciate you. I appreciate who you are. But right now, let's take a break, my friend. Let's just take a break. And that's not a problem. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, man.
It's healthy. You
Yeah,
know?
dude. Sometimes you got to walk away in order to like, step forward, walking away from something can give you the perspective that you really need, and I think that that's the smartest thing you could have done, the most compassionate thing you could have done in
To
that
both
situation.
of us. To
Exactly.
both of us.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we hold other people back and we don't realize it. Sometimes we really are holding them back from facing their own stuff,
Yeah.
And sometimes we heal them without realizing that we're doing it. And sometimes they got to figure it out themselves.
Yeah,
And,
man. Yeah,
life,
I mean,
right?
just speaking towards my musical history, I had something similar when I first started really diving into production. I had this group called Pax Humana, and we put out a couple of albums like over the span of like 3 or 4 years. But we worked together for almost 6 or 7 years. And at one point, I felt like, I had kind of gotten into the group as a way of like just learning. I really wanted to learn from a friend of mine. This guy, he's amazing. His name is Brian Lindgren. And we formed this group called Pax Humana. And it really, at first, it was just like, I just wanted to learn how to like produce and like learn some things from him because I really admired his work. And then it turned into this group, and then we ended up making records together and doing like Oreo commercials, all kinds of stuff, and
That's
it was
right.
yeah, like all kinds of stuff. But long story short, at one point in our like working together, I really felt like I needed to kind of step away from that relationship because I felt like I was not only holding myself back, but I was holding him back because
Yeah.
we were kind of like each other's crutch in a way. And
Yes.
like,
We
you
get this
know,
weird codependency, right?
yeah, exactly, man. And as soon as I did that, you know, my trajectory, my career started to like really take off in a way that I had been really wishing for. And he ended up going back to school and like getting a master's degree, and now he's like getting his doctorate degree. Like,
That's what
and
I'm
you know,
talking about, man.
we took extremely different paths, but it was because, you know, we had to kind of walk away from the relationship that we were in
Yep.
order to like really start to you know, see where the our individual potential would take us. And so a lot of times it's really that, like with any type of relationship, sometimes you have to step away from each other in order to see where your individual potential can lead you to. And
Right.
so I'm very excited to see what happens, man. We'll have to do a part 2,
Right.
when you know, at some point,
Right.
so I can hear
Well,
more about
the
this.
beautiful part yesterday is like at the same time that I was stepping back from one friend, another friend that I hadn't talked to in forever came back in. And so, and it was
There you
just
go.
like beautiful synchronicity. I was chatting with my friend Merlin, who I went to graduate school with in Los Angeles, and we just started chatting, and it was like we hadn't skipped a beat. But in truth, we haven't talked in about 2 years, and in that time, we both have gone through a world of changes, you know, with
Of course.
COVID and all these other things. And so, I'm excited, and we were like, dude, we need to sit down and have a conversation
There
and
you go.
see what happens, see where we are at.
Exactly,
Right?
exactly.
It's beautiful, man.
That's super beautiful.
One more question: if you had Aladdin's lamp, what would you wish for? One wish.
I would wish for financial freedom. To be
I love
honest,
that.
like,
Right?
yeah, man. Because honestly, like, you know, I love every aspect of being an artist, but it's very difficult, and
Yeah.
you
gotta
know,
hustle.
yeah, man, I've spent most of my career with like a job, you know, and it's
Yeah, I
only
understand.
been, yeah, it's only been the past like about 6 months that I've like tried to just be an artist and see where that takes me. And you know, it's challenging, you know, because
Yeah.
I'm always like, you know, thinking like I need to have this many like DJ sets, like, or this many gigs like set up. I need to be making this amount of like passive income from like my streams. You know, I started doing an NFT project to try to
I
create
want to bring you
income
back
through
on
that.
because I've
Yeah.
been trying to find some people who are doing NFTs and how they're, because some
Oh,
people
cool.
are making crazy money, dude.
Yeah, man. I mean, you know, and for me, it's like, it's not about the money as much as it's about especially like the beautiful aspect of shared ownership. The fact that I can have
Interesting.
someone buy an
we
NFT.
gotta dive into this,
Yeah.
man, because
Yeah,
I
definitely.
don't fully understand NFTs, and I'm so
Yeah.
interested by it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we could definitely go through the rabbit hole because, you know, before I got involved in doing this, I did like months and months of research, and then I'm still learning, you know, and I'm still like trying to like really understand what it is. But, you know, I've been able to sell a few NFTs, which has been great, and it's become like a way to create short-term income and like also give my NFT holders long-term income because they're owning a piece of the music that they're purchasing. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so it's kind of cool, man. But yeah, we can do the deep dive at some point.
I'm all for
I'm
that,
so
man.
about it.
I'll have to bring you back on. Well, brother, I appreciate this conversation and your time today, man. It's been awesome.
It's been beautiful, man. Thank you so much, Sean.
Anytime people ask me like, what are we going to talk about? And I'm just like, I gotta be like, man, I just kind of go with it where we go. And I mean, like, we had this beautiful discussion of Buddhism and sci-fi. And it's the flow of life. All right, one last question.
Yeah.
Since my 100th episode, we kind of talked about the whole time we talked about Star Wars. If you could be any character in Star Wars, which character would you be?
Whoa. Man. Probably Baby Yoda.
Right?
Because he's the cutest, yo.
Right? Yeah, man. Baby Yoda's awesome. Or would you which sci-fi universe would you like to jump into? Maybe that's a better start. Maybe you don't.
I mean, honestly, like the MCU is like my favorite universe of them all. You know, Marvel is like, yeah, if I could be like some awesome superhero, like that could fly and do maybe some other cool things, like that would be amazing. You know, they have it hard, you know, they got a hard life being superheroes, but at the same time, it's
have you been watching
awesome.
Moon Knight?
Oh yeah, of course, man.
So
it's
good.
amazing, dude. I watch every episode at least twice.
Yeah, right. No, that's I got to rewatch episode 3 tonight.
Yeah.
After we finish up, I'm diving back in.
Episode 3 was like, yeah, that was amazing. It's starting to get deep, yo.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's so good. So good.
Yeah.
Well, man,
very cool.
Let's do this again. I now know we need to talk NFTs and the MCU when we get back on, man.
That's what's up. Let's do it, man. Thank you so much.